The Russian military believed they had finally solved one of their biggest problems in Crimea. After weeks of repeated Ukrainian attacks, Moscow quickly deployed additional Su-30 fighter jets to Saky airbase, hoping the new squadron would strengthen air defense across the peninsula. Protected by some of Russia's most advanced missile systems, commanders were convinced the base had become nearly impossible to strike. On paper, their confidence made perfect sense. But what they didn't know was that Ukraine had already spent weeks preparing an operation designed to turn Russia's own air defenses against themselves. Just before sunrise, the calm over the Black Sea was suddenly broken. From a hidden launch site, 12 Ukrainian FP-02 drones lifted into the sky almost simultaneously. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary drone raid. Russian radar operators had seen similar attacks before and expected another straightforward interception. But this mission was different from the very beginning. Every drone had a specific role. Every flight path had been carefully calculated, and every second of the operation followed a precise plan. As the drones moved closer to Crimea, they did something unexpected. Instead of remaining together, the formation split into several smaller groups. One group climbed to a higher altitude, making itself far easier for Russian radar to detect. Another group stayed extremely low, flying just above the sea where waves and moisture could help hide their movement. The remaining drones slowed down, keeping their distance as if they were waiting for the perfect moment. To Russian commanders watching their radar screens, the situation quickly became confusing. Multiple targets were approaching from different directions, at different heights, and with completely different flight patterns. Inside the Russian command post, operators immediately recognized the incoming drones. The powerful S-400 air defense system locked onto the brightest radar signals, identifying the high-flying drones as the most dangerous threat. Everything appeared to be unfolding exactly as Russian crews had trained for. They possessed powerful long-range missiles capable of destroying aerial targets long before they reached the base. Confident in their technology, commanders prepared to eliminate the approaching drones without much difficulty. But that confidence was exactly what Ukraine had anticipated. The first drone group was never meant to survive. Their real mission was far more important than reaching the target. They existed to attract attention, force radar operators to react, and convince Russian crews that they had already identified the main attack. While those drones became the center of attention, the remaining groups quietly continued moving toward Crimea without attracting the same level of focus. This strategy exposed one of the biggest weaknesses of even the world's most advanced air defense systems. No radar crew can give equal attention to every threat at the same time. The more targets that appear from different directions, the more difficult it becomes to determine which one poses the greatest danger. Ukraine wasn't trying to overpower Russia with numbers. Instead, they were trying to overload the defenders' decision-making process, creating confusion that could open a small but critical gap in the defensive network. As Russian operators concentrated on the obvious targets lighting up their radar screens, another drone group continued flying just above the surface of the Black Sea. Hidden among sea clutter and natural radar reflections, these drones remained far more difficult to detect. At the same time, another group unexpectedly turned away from Crimea altogether, creating even more uncertainty inside the command center. Were they heading toward another military target, or was this simply another distraction? Every second spent answering that question gave the remaining drones valuable time to move closer to Saky airbase. The battle had already begun long before the first missile was launched. Ukraine wasn't relying on bigger weapons or larger numbers. Instead, it was using deception, timing, and coordination to slowly stretch Russia's powerful air defense network to its limits. And while Russian commanders believed they were controlling the situation, the real attack was only just beginning. The moment the first Ukrainian drone group entered the engagement zone, the Russian S-400 air defense battery wasted no time. Radar operators quickly locked onto the brightest targets, believing they had identified the main attack force. Seconds later, multiple interceptor missiles blasted into the sky, leaving long trails of white smoke behind them. Inside the command vehicle, confidence was high. The targets were clearly visible, the missiles were tracking perfectly, and the operators expected the engagement to be over within moments. From their perspective, this was exactly what the S-400 had been designed to do: destroy aerial threats long before they could reach their objective. No one inside the control room imagined that the drones appearing on their screens were never intended to survive. At almost the exact moment the missiles entered their final guidance phase, the Ukrainian drones suddenly changed everything. Instead of continuing at high altitude, all three aircraft sharply pitched downward and rushed toward the surface of the Black Sea. Within seconds, they were flying only a few dozen meters above the water. The maneuver happened so quickly that the missile guidance computers had almost no time to recalculate. A target that had been flying high in open air had suddenly disappeared into one of the most difficult tracking environments imaginable. The missiles continued diving after them, but every meter closer to the sea made accurate guidance increasingly difficult. Flying just above the water gave the drones a major advantage. Sea waves, moisture, and countless radar reflections created a chaotic background that complicated target tracking. Instead of seeing 3 clear drones against the open sky, the missile seekers now struggled to distinguish their targets from the constant reflections bouncing off the surface below. The guidance systems attempted to filter the interference, but at such extreme speeds there was very little time to process the information. Every second reduced the missile's chances of maintaining a stable lock. The Ukrainian operators understood that they did not need to destroy the incoming missiles directly. They only needed to force them into an environment where maintaining radar lock became extremely difficult. The drones continued flying steadily over the sea, resisting the temptation to make unnecessary turns. Their survival depended on remaining inside the radar clutter long enough for the missiles to lose confidence in their tracking solutions. It was a simple idea, but one that required precise timing and careful planning. Only moments later, the Russian interception failed. Unable to confirm the drone's exact position, the interceptor missiles automatically activated their self-destruct systems. Bright explosions flashed above the Black Sea, but the drones remained untouched beneath them. Millions of dollars worth of advanced missiles had disappeared without destroying a single target. Inside the Russian command center, confidence quickly turned into confusion. Operators who had expected an easy interception were suddenly forced to reconsider the entire situation. This was clearly not an ordinary drone attack. While Russian crews focused on understanding why the first interception had failed, another Ukrainian drone group quietly continued its mission.